Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for this last round of session today and for your interest in the topic of this panel discussion. Very glad that you all made it to the end of the day. This session is about the online experience of groups and communities that face discrimination and in our societies. And in the framework of this Privacy Camp edition on technology and activism, it was quite important for us to highlight how technology and especially the internet supported the creation and organization of social movements, of so many social movements online that actually fought and still are fighting against societal oppression. And that's the case for so many discriminated groups, for which the internet has been a really great empowerment tool. But unfortunately, the internet is also an extension of the offline world, and so it enables a lot of further discrimination and further forms of violence. So this is why it's essential to really understand how power relations function online, and how this impact and slow down the work of activists in organizing their cause online, and how they organize online and how they try to further their cause. For that purpose, I'm super pleased and super grateful to have with me 4 representatives of those groups. We have first Pamela Morinière, who is head of communication and campaigns, as well as gender officer at the International Federation of Journalists. Thank you for being here. We have Stefan Balog from Romea, which is an organization based in Czech Republic, working with Roma people and defending their rights. Thank you for making the trip. We have then Alejandro Moledo, who is a policy coordinator at European Disability Forum, based here in Brussels. And lastly, we also have Umaima Amidi from the Rainbow House in Brussels. So it's an LGBTQI+ center working at the local level here in Brussels. So welcome. I thank them already to be there for accepting to share their insights with us, and maybe going out of their comfort zone, talking to a different kind of crowd. So for that, I would ask the public and the audience to be welcoming with them. We all want kind of an inclusive and respectful debate and exchange today. So please be welcoming and make sure that they feel at ease and that they eventually come back to us. That being said, I would like to say a couple more words on the political context of this discussion. So why are we having this discussion today? And then we'll try to structure the discussion this way. I will try to set with the panelists, and the panelists will do this, set the debate, set the discussion, and try to map the different kind of violence that are taking place online. And then we'll try and turn to the public and have a discussion about potential solutions we can think of. So as for the context, the starting European mandate will actually try to look at regulating platforms online, and notably reopen the rules of the old e-commerce directive, which was adopted in the 2000s. And these rules had a huge impact on how platforms, or hosting intermediaries as we call them, how they moderate content online. And those rules might be reformed and re-edited. The text for now is called the Digital Services Act, and some people actually try to frame it as the next hate speech law. So it's quite interesting. This doesn't really come out of nowhere, because there were already several initiatives in the past at European level, but also at national level, to combat hate speech, to combat harmful content online. So for us as digital freedoms advocate, it will be like the huge next big legislative battle. And we will try to defend our vision of freedom of expression online. But of course, we need to remain really cautious and conscious of the various injustices, the forms of discrimination that are taking place, and try to integrate them into our position. And this is why it's so important that we consult different communities who do not enjoy the same social privileges as we have, like being white, being male, being heterosexual and cisgender, being able-bodied, and benefiting from a super higher education. So thank you. We'll start the discussion now. I want to start with turning myself to Pamela. What kind of forms of violence do female journalists especially experience online? Because now it's kind of inevitable for journalists not to use social media, but has had a lot of impact on their work, and especially kind of the environment, which can be sometimes violent, have on their work. How can they, what do they face regularly on their daily basis? Do you have examples?
First of all, thanks for inviting me. And I would just like to make that comment. We don't consider ourselves as a minority. Women journalists make almost now half of the journalism population. So that's not the way we see women journalists. But it's true that the issue of online harassment is something that has raised a lot of concerns in our organization. We represent journalist trade unions around the world. We represent about 600,000 journalists. It has been, we've been running several campaigns actually on this issue in the past 5 years. It's not a new issue at all for us. And I will share some examples with you, but it's, the online harassment has been going on for a long time. I think that the only difference now is that journalists consider that it is not part of the job anymore. And I think for many years it's just been like, okay, we speak publicly, we get our stories in the public. It's fair enough that we get a bit of abuse, but actually the amount of abuse that especially women journalists get goes far beyond what should be acceptable in a workplace. We are an organization that promote press freedom. So I feel also quite comfortable here because I think we share lots of values with people in this room and outside this room. And that's why also the issue of social media is very dear to us, because we want to prevent abuse, but at the same time we want to allow people to be able to communicate and to express themselves. We publish every year a big report that counts the number of journalists that have been killed around the globe. 49 journalists have been killed last year, for example. And what we found out is that most of these journalists had received threats before they got killed, threats that have not been taken into account by governments, but also by media houses. And this is why it's so important for us that we take this online violence seriously. We have published a first survey on this issue in 2017 because we wanted to document the extent of violence that women get, because it's true that they get more abuse than men online, and at least it's a different type of abuse. It's a gendered abuse. It's often sexually connoted, and it has a lot of links to the way society is, unfortunately. And we found out that 43% of journalists, of women journalists in the world, faced online abuse, which is almost half of the working force, which is scandalous. And so we've tried to respond to that, and I'll come back to that later, but we put many things in place in order to respond. And just maybe what is concretely how it happens. Online abuse takes two forms, at least for journalists. It's first the online impersonation, meaning you set up a Facebook account, a Twitter account on behalf of someone else, and you pretend to be this person and send out-of-place comments. And the second one, which is probably the most used, is online threats of rapes, sexist comments, downgrading comments. That's the usual type of thing. And to give you a concrete example, There's a famous journalist who is called Khadija Ismailova, that some of you may know, who's an Azeri journalist. And it was already back in 2012 that she got abused online because people wanted to prevent her from revealing lots of cases of corruption. She's a very well-known, very well-respected investigation journalist. And some people threatened to publish online a video of her and her partner having sex. And they said, well, we're going to publish it unless you stop writing. And she said, I will never stop writing. And they published that video, and it went completely viral. And this journalist has spent then several years in jail. This is just to give you a concrete example also of the bravery of some of these women journalists. Lots of them cannot cope with it, but some of them also cope with it and continue writing despite these threats that are very hard to take.
Yeah, that's definitely a big challenge to just claim the space. It deserves a lot of courage that not all of us have. I would like to turn to Umaima. Could you please briefly maybe explain to our crowd, which is an international crowd, what is the work of the Rainbow House in Brussels? And how does it interlink with today's topic? Like, what is your use of social media? And how do your activists or your members use social media to organize and to plan activities?
Thank you. I want also thank Edri for the invitation. So I work for Rainbow House Brussels. It's the umbrella of the LGBTQI+ association in Brussels. We have actually 64 LGBT organizations in Brussels, and we are the umbrella. Our work is very large. We are a political lobby at regional and national level. At the European level, we are working with ILGA. We have various missions. We are very active in culture with the 3 big festivals in Brussels, also at school, in education. So we are very present in different sectors. So social media, that was the question. Social media are actually essential in our job. We used to work with famous platforms like Facebook, Instagram, with internet in generally, because in Belgium the user of Facebook count 6 million, more than 6 million people. So it's a huge numbers. And our community, I think, have also a special relation with the social media, because it seems like very accessible to everyone. We know there are a lot of problems, but the LGBT community are organized through the social network, so social media. The problem, if I can speak about the violence, c'était déjà dans la question? Okay, because LGBT community also are exposed to many violence, even like women. There are also double discrimination. If you are a lesbian woman, you are also victim of homophobia and sexism. But LGBT community has really specific attacks and violence, like blackmail from the authority or from the users, other users. I think, for example, of the application Grindr. Everyone maybe know Grindr. It's an application to meet other gay men. So in countries outside Europe, like Tunisia, for example, the police use Grindr. They created fake accounts to catch gay men. This is very common. But in Europe, we have also a big problem with this app. And also in the United States, for example, in United States, the Grindr il a vendu, by the information, the data of the users to two big companies. In France or in Belgium, the users use, like homophobic users of bad people use this app to take money, to attack the gay men, and the authority is not, yes, it's not responding seriously to this big problem. And blackmail, yes, maybe people from Holland heard about these young YouTubers, women who was victim of blackmail with the outing, like, you know, the word out, to be out is, so this is also very common. People use the story of trans people, lesbian people to say, okay, you have a YouTuber, but if you don't sell. So this is very common, and we have also waves of discrimination when you have like controversial topics. I think France, for example, when there was the Eurovision with the Bilal Hassani, who was representing France, we see like we saw a big wave of homophobia, racism, xenophobia, and of course the LGBT users are exposed to this discrimination. So a lot of things
that take a lot of different forms, and even if you're not, I feel like even if you're not vocal, you just try to use the services at hand, you can still be like attacked for who you are, and feel uncomfortable in those space because you're not welcome, because other people get the attack and you feel like you're shutting yourself down. Turning to people with disabilities, Alejandro, how do people with disabilities use the internet, and how is people getting abused online? Could you please kind of share your examples of kind of online abuse that target people with disabilities?
Thank you very much, and I also second the thanks to Edri for inviting to share our experience. Well, first of all, I'd like to mention that persons with disabilities are early adopters of technologies, of new technologies, and actually many innovation when it comes to technologies such as, for instance, the TV remote control came up because of trying to overcome a disability challenge. And you may think of like the very first act of discrimination towards persons with disabilities when it comes to these communication platforms or any piece of technology or technology service is the lack of accessibility. I mean, persons with disabilities, they are early adopters of technologies when these are available, affordable, and accessible to them. So the very first act of discrimination that we found many times in our everyday life is the lack of accessibility when you want to use a computer, when you want to use a smartphone, or when you want to use a website. And people with disabilities tend to use technologies on a greater extent than their non-disabled peers, because with technologies, if these are accessible, of course, you can overcome many barriers that you encounter, physical barriers that you encounter in your everyday life. And this is why, I always like to mention this, the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which has been ratified by the EU as a regional organization and by all member states, so it belongs to the legal framework of the EU, does recognize accessibility to new technologies and the internet as a right that needs to be protected and promoted by the third parties. And this is what, from EDF, we've been advocating for, ensuring that, and we'll do the same along with EDRI for the Digital Services Act, to ensure that all the proposals put forward by the EU do actually incorporate accessibility as a prerequisite. And having said that, then obviously persons with disabilities do also suffer in cases of either misleading portray or discriminatory portraits of disability, to hate speech, to harassment and cyberbullying. We've seen many cases, and there is the most recent and famous one has been the case of Greta Thunberg, the activist, who was accused of being instrumentalized by her parents because of her autism. She reversed the attacks and said that this was her superpower. But persons with disabilities face these kind of portraits on an everyday basis. And needless to say, if you are a person with a disability, if you're a woman with disability, and women with disabilities suffer like 6 out of 10 women with disabilities suffer forms of abuse throughout their lives. And is even greater when it comes to people with intellectual disabilities. In those cases, I would recommend you to take a look at a report from one of our members, Inclusion Europe, which is the organization representing people with intellectual disabilities, in which they gather cases of harassment, of bullying, of threats as well, blackmailing, persons with intellectual disabilities, and maybe we'll throughout the debate we can go into more details about this. I want to keep it short.
No problem. I hope you're going to have enough time to share more. The reality of Roma people, it's another one. It's completely different because maybe not everyone knows what does actually entail. Can you explain just very shortly, I know it's hard because it takes multi-forms, but what is anti-Gypsyism? Why do we call it like this? And what form does it take online?
So Roma and Sinti people have been living in Europe more than 600 years, and their discrimination and their political persecution has been happening for just as long. Roma people usually are described by the society as people who don't work, who don't send the children to the school, who doing criminal activities. So through the online world and also the normal world, non-online world, it's about the hate against Roma people. So usually when there's for example, school and there's a class in that school, there are 3 Roma children. The non-Roma children don't want to sit next to them just because their parents told them that the Roma people are not the same as them. So, or for example, when the Roma people goes to the hospital, the doctors and the staff in the hospital treats them differently than the non-Roma people. I think in the past decade, the hate against Roma people spread very quickly just because of the social media like Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and all the other social medias. When the Roma people are presented in the main medias in the positive ways, it's usually when it's something abnormal or it's a sensation. For example, there were women who gave birth to quintuplets, and it happens that the woman is a Roma woman. And it was the first quintuplets in Czech Republic, so they are treating them very good. But on the other side, most of the society treat them good, but on the other side there were also people who were like, they will get a social welfare system, they will get a present from the donors. So it's like I think it's my opinion that there's many ways to describe the anti-Gypsyism, but for me it's like hate on the Roma people in general way. It happens online, it happens in the streets, it happens whenever you go. There is someone in the population who has something against Roma people. Yeah. Usually, when you're talking with someone about Roma, the people say that Roma can only dance, sing, and play instruments. No one, nothing else can do. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like kind of a very deep discrimination, feeling, stereotypes being attached to this. I just want to further discussion on this. Like, do you have kind of like example, or how does it like this online violence that Roma people experience, like really discrimination at school, in every single public service? You mentioned hospital, for example. How does it interlink with online violence? Are they like, is online violence then leading to offline violence, for example?
Usually when it's hate against Roma people online, in many cases it stays online. But there were some cases in Czech Republic when the online hate becomes in the real world, and it was very rough. For example, one boy from the town Břeclav, he was exercising, he was non-Roma guy. He was exercising somewhere, doing some gymnastic stuff, and he injured himself very badly. So he ended up in the hospital. But before he went to the hospital, and he was scared to tell his mother about the injury, so he told his mother that 3 Roma guys beating him up. And so he went to the hospital, and when he woke up from the surgery, it was in all of the major media that 3 Roma guys hurt 1 boy. So on the Facebook, on the YouTube, in the major media, it was like big rumor about it. And it ended up as a big demonstration of about 2,000 people in Břeclav, in the town Břeclav. And about 200 people from that crowd, the right-wing radicals, wanted to go to the part of the city where Roma lives, and they want to confront them and they want to beat them, but the police protected the Roma people. But yeah, this is one of the few cases that the online hate becomes in the real world, in the offline world. But I think my opinion is that the online hate is sometimes more dangerous than the offline, because as I said, it spreads very quickly, and it very dangerous for people, because the hoax or the untrue informations are very dangerous, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely, and it just continues the thinking, and it's very pervasive as well. It feels like everybody thinks the same thing about Roma people. There is no counter argument being shown online, so it's really hard to get against this narrative as well. Coming back to female journalists, maybe, or journalists in general, how do you explain that a specific kind of gendered violence is exercised against female journalists and not their male counterpart? Is there a difference, and how can you explain it?
Yeah, to give you an example, The Guardian conducted a survey in 2016, and they reviewed all the comments, about 70 million comments that they received online, and looked at how it affected their writers, their contributors, and out of the 10 most targeted contributors, 9 were women and 1 was a black man. It's just to illustrate how pervasive it is actually for women. I think one of the explanation for this is unfortunately patriarchy. Sometimes it's difficult to see women being out loud on the internet, on social media, exposing some various serious cases of corruption, of politicians, wrongdoings. It's an issue for certain people. It's an issue to read about journalists that are feminists. I have the example a couple of months ago of a journalist a woman journalist who wrote a critiques about Tarantino's film and said that his latest film was sexist. To be honest, I haven't seen the film, and it's true, when I read these critics, I didn't really want to see the film. But some people took it really personally. I mean, it's freedom of speech, you know. It's someone, okay, she's probably a feminist journalist. She's writing a comment about a film. She got loads of abuse online. It's been terrible for her. I've met her personally, so I know that it has affected her for a couple of months afterwards. People looked into her biography. They criticized the work she did, herself, the fact that she's still young in the profession as well was an issue. So that's, yeah, patriarchy is a real trouble. That's something that we need to confront.
Absolutely. I've seen the film, and I know this critic, and I agree with her, I think. Coming back to LGBT, there is on one side like the mechanisms that attackers use online to attack LGBTQ people that you explained already. You give a really good overview of all the kinds of mechanisms that are being in place to silence people or to threaten them. But on the other side, there is another actor that we sometimes forget about, like activists, which are platforms themselves. We're using like very few platforms, and they have also a huge impact on how we actually can express our freedom of expression. What is it in the case of LGBTQI plus people? How do main platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Grindr even, as you mentioned them, how do they impact the life of LGBTQI plus people, but also the movement in general?
Okay, thank you. I think I also forget to spoke about censor in the first question, because I speak about violence, discrimination. Censor is also a discrimination. I think the LGBT movement, when I speak about LGBT movement, I mean political movement, organization, national organization, and European organization. They use every day the Facebook or other media. But we are also exposed to the censor, like other groups, but with LGBT is, for example, against the bodies. Like bodies are, when we spoke about bodies with LGBT, it's part of our culture. Bodies for are political. Like a lot of intellectuals are right about this. We are questioning body because in the society the authority question our bodies. So if we organize exposition, for example, at Rainbow House, sometimes you have a naked man, naked woman, or if you speak about vulva, we have usually censor about Facebook, for example, more Facebook than Instagram. We can not promote all our events. So this is very a critical thing. And but we have also to recognize that we are not like against this kind of platform, because we get also benefit. Today there is a big community of YouTubers a big influencer on Instagram. So it's also a space to share, to spread the information, also the experiences, because we are now in a new society of sharing experience. Like young people, they prefer to see a video about a trans man than read a book. So it's not, it's a little bit caricatural, I understand, but videos are very important, so we have also benefit of this.
Yeah, of course, we all benefit from the internet. That's quite interesting. Coming back to your people with disabilities, what are the views of children and people with disabilities on all those problems, on all this kind of discrimination taking place online? And how does it impact them? How does it impact their social life, their health? I can imagine also in general their whole experience of being online, and what are the things they put in place to protect themselves?
Thanks. Well, it's very diverse, obviously, and on one hand, and going briefly on the use of the movement as well, the disability movement of this platform is obviously a tool that has been very much used. I mean, there are some hashtags which are hilarious, and at the same time, they are pushing changes in society, such as "Crip the Vote," to denounce problems in voting rights and exercise your right to vote. Disabled people are hot. Abled people are weird. I mean, there are some campaigns running, ongoing campaigns which have been used, and obviously many persons with disabilities reinforce their identity through this or use this platform as a way to also self-identification, self-determination as well. And again, this contrasts very much with the problems that they face when it comes to what I mentioned before, all those cases, and particularly those disabilities such as intellectual or psychosocial disabilities, meaning mental health issues, which obviously made a cause that those people will face double discrimination or more barriers to exercise their rights, and, for instance, seek for remedies on how to respond to those abuses. And these people know, and in the case of children, for instance, there is a report from the Council of Europe in 6 countries, I believe, in which they had focus group with children with disabilities, and in total there were 97 children, and unanimously, what a difficult word, all of them said that they don't disclose their disability online, and they don't want to disclose their disability online because they fear that this would attract abuse and rejection. And many of them mention also their use of assistive technologies, their special devices that they use in some cases as a signifier of their disability. And everything comes to ensuring that children with disabilities and people with disabilities do get the support they need to first identify those cases. No, first, in this order, first, how to be safe, then identify these cases of abuse, and then being able and knowing how to respond. And in cases of people with intellectual disabilities, of children, the assistance that their peers, their families, their relatives could provide them is very important. But without the knowledge on how to cope with this kind of situation, many people with disabilities are just disencouraged from using this platform, and that's not the way. No, because then if I may, the bad guys will win. So we need more support, we need more awareness on how to be safe, how to identify cases, how to respond to those. And this we can only make it if we finally ensure and fight for to embrace diversity in this social media as well, or in this social platform, and that comes to education in the end, I guess.
Super interesting, actually, answer. We're moving slightly towards like trying to think about avenues for improving the experience of the different people we talked today. I'm going to do a last round of questions before moving to the public, and I will try to direct them a bit towards like solution. Stefan, can you present a bit the work you've been doing with Romea on this issue of online experience, online violence? And maybe if you have like a Roma perspective on what the legislator could do or what companies could do, if you have any idea for that?
Thank you. We in Roma, we are trying to help Roma people in many different ways. But as you ask about the online violence, if there's some case of discrimination and violence against Roma people, they can call us. They can, we can help them in recommendation to other organizations that, for example, help them through their legal advice, social advices. We used to, in the past, we used to have discrimination helpline, yeah. And it's still working because many of Roma people calling us about some housing problems, some schooling problems, and we are trying to give them a recommendation for other organizations, but also we are trying to help because most of our work is with the children, especially high school children, Roma children who are maybe discriminated in the school. So we are trying to help them, giving them a scholarship and helping them through the studies, because we think that if we want to change some view on Roma people in Czech Republic, we have to do it through the young people. So I think if there will be some in the future, there will be some lawyers, there will be teachers, and there will be Roma teachers, Roma lawyers. It maybe will change a little bit the mindset of the people in the majority. So besides the helpline, the discrimination helpline, we have the other programs for the children, and also the newest one is that we are traveling around the elementary schools in Czech Republic, and we are motivating the Roma children in elementary school to go to the high school, to be a better person, to have a better life, to show the majority that there are no disabilities in Roma community. We can get what we want if we trying hard. And the second question, there were many differences in investigating some causes. So there was for example, there was a picture of elementary school children, and there were few of them were Roma children, and it was on Facebook, and there was a comment that these Roma children should be killed by gas like in the Second World War. So this actual case was investigated, and it ended up in a trial. But there were many other that don't. So maybe my advice for the higher authorities to unify the system of investigating all these causes, because it's doesn't mean that it's maybe inconsequential, but it is. So yeah, to unify all the steps to investigate it.
That's really interesting. It's really like two things. It's not just focusing on online, but it's a broader. We're talking about broader societal problem. We're talking about patriarchy. We're talking about racism. We are talking about anti-justice, and this is like we need to think about like education, obviously, educational measures. And the second point is also super good because it's about like the prosecution of illegal hate speech online and how this doesn't actually work at the moment, and people fail to actually prosecute those who are doing the bad, who are like providing racist comments, hurting people. And this is usually left without any consequences, you said. So I think it's two good points we can take on board. What about, I'm coming back to you, Pamela, if you have any recommendation in terms of countering online violence against women journalists, some best practices. You were talking about media. It's also interesting to have a point of view, your viewpoint about what media themselves can do to protect their own journalists.
Yes, there's many things we can do, and it's true. I quite agree with you that the main problem is impunity. It's total impunity for comments, people hiding behind nicknames, which is or people being anonymous. I know it's probably an important issue in this forum as well. I'm not saying people should not be anonymous, but what we're witnessing is that people under anonymous account are sending a lot of hatred messages, and that's problematic. Now, I think it's a problem for all of us, actually. When we see, from our perspective as media professional, the effect of online harassment is that people don't dare to speak up anymore. It has a chilling effect not only on women journalists and men journalists, because they get abused as well. It has effect on them, but it also has effect on people witnessing what's happening. It means it discourages other people to speak up and be active on social media. And I don't think it's just the issue of Roma people. It's not the issue of LGBT or journalists. It's everyone's problem if social media lack diversity and pluralism. So one very simple thing that could be done is that each time one sees abuse online, one reacts. From our perspective as media, we're asking media organizations to take a stand and protect their journalists publicly. So if one journalist, because what happens very often is that the female that are most targeted are freelance journalists. The ones that don't work, that are not protected by newsrooms, that sometimes work from home and have clearly less protection than the rest of the newsroom. It's very important that the media take a stand and say that this is not acceptable, that there is a zero tolerance against online harassment, and that they speak up on the social media, on the feed of the journalist that is being attacked, to protect them. And it's important for us as well, witnessing this, to do the same. Because if you send a private message to a journalist or anyone else to say, look, I'm so sorry, this is so unfair, it's good for this person, but it doesn't give any message, it doesn't send any message to the harasser. And I'm not talking about troll, because I consider that this is harassment as much as offline harassment. It's not a troll, it's a real person who is harassing. So that's the main thing. Then the media also have to educate themselves. There's clearly a lack of gender equality education in the media itself, and also in journalism schools. So there needs to be a whole education on gender equality. And there's also generally a lack of policies dealing with gender equality, dealing with online abuse, etc. online. I've heard of women journalists saying that they had to convince moderators to take down some content because they didn't understand what a misogynist comment was. And it's not fair that you have to battle against one of your colleagues to take a comment down, a comment that is affecting you deeply. So that would be some of the advice to to make a change. It's also touching about freedom of expression, so we have to be cautious, but there are some simple steps that can be taken.
Absolutely. Even this idea of this is about like also the moderator being aware and deconstruct a bit and understand and being able to identify the discrimination is already a big step. And in general, when we think about the big platforms, moderators are not trained for this. They're like really far from realities, and maybe they don't even understand the language in which the comment was posted. So it's a big issue in terms of training the person who are responsible for moderating the content. Regarding LGBT, do you have any recommendation in terms of legislation, or even, I know maybe you thought about good example of companies who can support LGBT in feeling better online. Do you have any kind of guidelines for this?
Yes, I think specifically for Belgium, the first thing that we have to do is about number and statistic, because actually we don't have a good representative statistic about violence with the LGBT against the LGBT community. For this, Rainbow House is working with the regional government in the SOGI plan, and we created a report card so people can come to Rainbow House to report, because actually the numbers are based about the numbers of the police and UNIA. So we know in our organization, in our community, people don't trust the police, so they don't go to the police. So these numbers are not very credible. This is one thing, statistic and numbers, to develop a better solution and response. Then I think about law and rules. I think law can protect the groups, everyone, LGBT, Roma, women, every minority, but laws have also positive impact in the society. For example, with equal marriage for LGBT, they give a lot of hope to LGBT community, but also to the homophobic people, like in France or in United States. We say a lot of, so the numbers change, like people who were homophobic change because they notice nothing changed. The word is okay, even with equal marriage, so this is positive. So I think maybe IDRI can research with all what is concerning the term of use. For example, if someone registered to Grindr or to Instagram or YouTube, you have the first term of use, and we know nobody read this because it's very, very long, it's kilometric, nobody understand. Specifically people with my English, we are like too lazy to read it. So maybe we have to think about all users, language, maybe not once, because you receive the term of using one time, but you can have like reminder. There are also new companies. I don't want to make promotion, but for example, Netflix, there are, yes, you see like LGBT activists, the initiative to represent all people and to have respect to the communities, specifically the LGBT community. And it's very interesting, I think, for young people. And maybe one thing, when we talk about education, we have also to think to old generation, specifically in North, because our population are becoming old, and they use also the social media, and this is also very important. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you the same question, Alejandro. What are your biggest recommendation to counter this whole problematic, and what could the legislator or the companies, it's up to you, which one you want to address tonight, which kind of recommendation you would give them?
Thanks. Well, as I mentioned before, the answer is not to disencourage anybody from using the platform, but to be prepared and to know how to respond. And regarding the policy recommendations and going a little bit beyond these kind of platforms, at the European Disability Forum last year we published this report, which is called Plug and Pray that it works for you, obviously, in which we look into the opportunities and also the risks of artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, the reality technology like AR and VR and so forth for persons with disabilities. And actually one of the recommendations is precisely what we are doing today, which is like to exchange information about different groups and build allies and synergies. So again, this encouragement of using this platform is not a solution. Reinforcement of how to be safe and identify cases of abuse and being able to respond. Some may say that you need to invest on digital skills of persons with disabilities. That's true, but let's not put the burden on the user, because we tend to say, okay, we need more digital skills, but in the end, what we also need is the platforms, so the companies to make the remedy mechanism, how to report a case, easy to understand and easy to use. We need the data protection agencies to raise awareness of their role and being closer to citizens. So, okay, of building these digital skills for, particularly, as you mentioned, for children, for the next generation and so forth, but we also need to push and ensure that these platforms and the remedial mechanisms that we have in place are actually accessible for persons with disabilities and easy to understand and use. Otherwise, they won't make a they won't serve they won't fit its purpose. And in those cases that I mentioned before from this report from Inclusion Europe on people with intellectual disabilities, most of them they just turn to relatives and friends. And in the end, we need to provide the tailored learning materials and support to those peers and the individuals with disabilities in our case. And again, accessibility also as one of the prerequisites, otherwise it won't work. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for everyone. There is clearly some recommendation that goes out of the scope of kind of the Digital Services Act, but it's still good to hear them and think about how we can integrate them in our thinking. I'm going to turn to you now and see whether there are some questions for our panelists. Don't be shy. And if you can address, if you want to address the whole panel or a specific person, don't hesitate.
Yeah, I think I actually have one question, but to all of you. In your practice, do you have any experience with mediation as a way of resolving the disputes between a person who was harassed or discriminated? And I'm not only referring to online conflicts. And if you have any experience with mediation or any other, I don't know, alternative dispute resolution methods, what's your opinion? Does it work, or would you rather stick to, because for example you said that there has to be a reaction to some online harassment, for example. So what would be the proper reaction or the legal, the response of the law system?
So if I understand correctly, it's more like going beyond legal responses and just trying to find kind of soft mediation measures. Not really.
And how does it work for you?
Mediation. Who wants to respond? Is it clear for everyone? Yeah? Carmela?
I haven't heard of such experience, but there is a whole education process going on. The reason why there is no mediation is that most of the time it's difficult to identify the harassers, except when they are actually people from the profession, which is also the case sometimes. But in that case, the response has been pretty straightforward. I'm thinking, for example, of La Ligue du LOL. It's a group of French journalists that most of them had very high positions in the media, and for many years, La Ligue du LOL could be translated as the guild of LOL, being laugh out loud. Which is exactly what it was. So this group of male journalists would harass certain freelance female journalists for years on many topics, and no one said anything for many years because all of them had very high connection and were all at high level position within media. And when the story came out last year, it was actually last February, in a French newspaper, many of them were fired. They were first suspended and fired, but it was not what I would call mediation. But at least there was a response. Mediation is complicated because, most of the time, when you have this mob of messages, it's very difficult to identify who is actually there. But I think it could be a solution. It's true. And actually, thinking about it, sometimes people have apologized. So there's hope.
So for me, the way how to maybe did I understand the question that you want to know if there's a softer way how to cooperate with the violence on the internet? Is it right? Is it the question good? Or?
Is it maybe not pictured this way you wanted? Sorry.
Well, okay, maybe mediation or the restorative justice approach may sound as a software approach, but it's not. Well, in its application, doesn't have to be soft. You have the actor, you have the perpetrator. You confront him or her with the person harassed, and you have to. And in some systems, the court refers parties to the mediation, and it's very difficult because you have this inequality of these parties. It's very hard to mediate, and in some systems, it's even considered that these are not mediatable. The cases are not capable of being mediated, so it doesn't have to be soft. And it's sometimes mediation is mandatory, but the benefit is that with the traditional approach, you punish, like you said, some people got fired, but this doesn't necessarily mean that they understood what they were fired for. They don't understand. Maybe they don't understand what was the reason. They would not agree with the outcome. And what mediation in the criminal law, what it does, I mean, not always, but what it can do is that it may help the perpetrator to understand and change their behavior.
Yeah, thank you. Right now I understand. I've never experienced process like this in my career in Romania, but as I can say, we have a different type of ways how to maybe cooperate with the people who did some hate on the internet. So we are trying to educate them about the history of Roma people, for example. If they're knowing better the history of the people, they maybe understand the whole issue. And also, if we are trying to, or maybe there's another way to spread the, or to help the people understand that, to not just educate themselves, but maybe to understand the community to share sometimes with the community also. So yeah, that's all. But this type of way I've never experienced, so I'm not sure if I'm able to talk about. So yeah.
Somebody wants to.
I only know that mediation is very much used in the US for accessibility cases, accessibility barriers that people find online, and instead of taking the company to court, they have this remedial and mediation action. In Europe, I don't think it's very much in place for these purposes yet.
Non, ça va.
Ça va? Do we have another question? Nope. Yes?
Thank you, first of all. I'm not sure if it's a comment or a question, because it's not yet completely articulated in my thoughts, but like, for example, in the Netherlands, there's within education, the primary education, there's like a systemic forms of exclusion towards children of color. So from a kind of white supremacist paternalism in the sense of protecting the children of color from higher education, because they probably will have to struggle too much from this kind of paternalism. So I heard different comments about education and the struggle. Also in terms of the scholarships, in terms of making pathways for marginalized communities to get to resources you otherwise cannot. So maybe I want to have a little bit more your take on this topic, and of course I don't know how it is within your local context. So yeah, that's about it.
Somebody understand everything? I didn't. There is a question. The question is on what is your thoughts on this program of scholarship for children?
Wait. Let me think 1 second.
What I can suggest is that you can try to formulate your question and then try to reach one of the panelists and ask it directly, because unfortunately we are ahead of our time.
Okay. Yes.
But thank you very much. And
so then I will formulate my question.
You after that. Sorry, I didn't make myself clear. I suggest you think about your question and then you grab one of the panelists by the arm and try to ask the question directly to her or to him. Thank you so much for staying so long. There is now food actually outside, I think. Sorry? Oh, there is the closing ceremony that everybody needs to attend, absolutely, because it's amazing. A big round of applause for the panelists and sharing their experience, and be there.